Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the pod. My name is Joe, and who do I have with me today?
Hey, Joe. I'm Heather.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Me, Jamie. How are you?
Hello.
Good morning. I'm Lisa with FreeKind. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Lisa. We're going to chat a little bit about FreeKind in just a little bit. But before that, let's talk about the weekend. And before that, we promised y'all that we would be dressed up a little bit last week on the podcast. So here we are. Today's Spirit Day. We're supposed to wear ugly Christmas sweaters.
Ugly. Well, just ugly sweater is what it said, I thought.
Yeah.
It's just ugly sweater.
And Jamie.
Well,
Yeah,
you do. It's a Christmas thing. So, I mean,
Jamie.
one would think Christmas. But
Jamie did the
it just
most
was
Jamie thing.
Ugly sweater day. So I have a picture of Sam Hager on my sweater to make it ugly. And that's my ugly sweater.
Okay.
Dumb Sam's on my sweater. There it is.
You can't super tell what he's wearing.
Yeah.
This picture of Sam. So if you're just listening today, I do encourage you to go to our YouTube channel so that you can actually see what's happening here.
Yeah.
Jamie has a small picture of Sam safety pinned onto his just normal sweater.
Uh-huh.
This picture of Sam is him in this
Cowboy
outfit from back when we were doing events to raise funds for the building, for the Hub 757.
Yes.
We had a rodeo-themed event.
Yeah, I guess
one
it
night.
had to have been like Western themed.
Yeah,
themed,
it was a
something like
rodeo, and it was out in Smithfield. Is where that was.
Oh, that's where that one was? I was
Yeah.
trying to remember where.
It was at the event center out in Smithfield.
Okay.
I must have blocked it out.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of this.
There were some pictures. Jamie was very, very pregnant with Mason at the time of this one. And oh man, that picture of Sam.
Classic.
It is a classic.
Yeah.
It's a doozy.
I went to his Facebook page and downloaded it.
Okay.
Yeah. Printed it
Yeah.
off. I did, for the record, if anyone thinks I'm being mean to Sam,
I mean, you are being mean, but
I
you're
sent
being
him a
mean to
text.
his face.
I sent him a text and asked him about this, and he said, "You know my motto: any publicity is good publicity." So he's all
like
about
him.
it. Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Can we just point out that this is not just a regular safety pin? This is like a
It's January
old-fashioned
first.
diaper
Yeah.
size.
Right.
Yeah.
Safety pin.
I asked Debbie if she had one. That's what she had.
produced?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the
Alrighty.
biggest safety pin I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It looks like one that the Flintstones would have used on Pebbles or something.
Yes, you're right. That's what Debbie had. You know?
Questions for her later.
That is too funny.
Joey, your sweater is
Yes.
a little disappointing.
It is, we're on the podcast. It was supposed to be some grand illumination, so I got one that's going to light up, and here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Oh gosh,
Nothing.
That's very disappointing.
Nothing.
I mean,
Jeremy's
nothing
here
at all.
trying to turn
What a letdown.
the lights off in here
I
so
mean,
we can see
look,
it better.
Are
and
you
it's
sure
not working.
that you said they're dim?
Listen,
I don't believe that's true.
$12 at Walmart, my expectations are where they're at. I mean,
Yeah.
I just got to carry this thing around all day.
Yeah.
You could maybe exchange it for one
Anywho.
that works.
Yeah, I'd go back to Walmart. I'd
Anyway.
take it back.
That sounds like me. Sounds like something I
Everybody
do.
likes to make exchanges.
Lisa walked up this morning. She said if she would have known, she could have participated, but I just didn't want to torture her with what our staff is having to endure with this whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Ours, it's called Forced Family Fun.
yeah,
Nice.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
kind of the theme of our Christmas
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
Forced Family Fun.
which
Every
most
day.
of us are having fun with it. Jamie,
fun.
Yeah.
I'm having fun.
Jamie, are you being honest?
Yes, I'm being
Okay,
honest.
okay.
Yeah, I have every event in my personal calendar. So I like
Okay.
when it's Spirit Wear Day, I know what color I'm supposed to wear,
All right.
all
Yeah.
the things. So yeah, I'm fully participating.
Okay, I
having
love
a
it.
grand time.
A grand time.
But didn't you invite the whole church to participate?
Well,
coming up?
on the 22nd,
Yes.
Yes.
we are
Okay.
having Ugly Christmas Sweater Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going
I'll be
back
ready
to
for it
Walmart.
then.
Yeah.
There you
I'm
go.
not
Different
wearing
one?
this one.
Oh, okay.
Nope, not on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm trying to decide if I'm going to sport this again or if I do have
like that
another
one.
option.
You have other options?
Yeah.
Wow.
Joe, they also have very Christmas blazers at Kohl's.
Oh, yeah.
If you're interested, I saw a woman buying
yeah.
2 of them
AKA
the other day.
Greg Lamont.
Greg
Yeah.
Lamont.
Yes.
Yeah.
Greg
Families.
Lamont,
They all
one of
have
our
those.
elders.
Yeah.
He helped us kick off Worst Family Fun, and he came in full suit.
That
Yes,
did light up.
That did
and
light
actually
up.
lit up.
And
Yeah.
was
Yeah, well.
like blinking light up.
Yeah.
It puts this thing to shame.
Yeah. That's pitiful. Really.
Clearly.
Kohl's. Yeah.
Yeah. Kohl's over Walmart.
Kohl's over Walmart.
Yeah.
Should have known.
Kohl's wins.
Should have known.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that too.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Yes.
how was everyone's weekend?
My weekend was good.
Yeah.
We went out with some friends on Friday night. I'm trying to remember where we went.
One of those nights, huh?
I know. Yeah, one of those nights. Where did we end up going? Oh, we went to Neat Bird down in Chesapeake,
Oh, yeah.
which I love that place.
Yeah, that place is great.
We end up doing like mostly just order all of their starters.
Their
and then-
starters are really good.
I know, and then a pound of nugs.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's the
that's the way
place
to go.
across
I love
from
that.
Cork and Bull,
Yes.
right there in Volvo.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Luce
I wanna go
Secondo.
back.
Yeah, I've only been there once, but it was great.
Yeah.
I need to go again.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's delicious. So we did that, and then we came back and just sat around and chatted. And then my son
I
Spencer, he was at the play on Friday night, and he's texting us like late.
I saw
on
the video.
Friday.
He showed
You
it to
did?
me, yeah.
Yeah, it's inappropriate. He's texting
Well, there's
us.
some language.
He's like, "Hey, are y'all
kind.
home?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're home. I mean, yeah, we're home." And he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop by." We're like, "All right." So he comes over after the play and walks in the house, and Nate was in our kitchen, and it's like kind of dark, and so I hear Nate, and he's saying like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And so the rest of us were down in the den. And so we're like, what's happening? What's going on? And then Spencer walks in. Now, my son Spencer he hasn't cut his hair since 2017. And he's had dreads for like the last almost 6 years.
Yeah.
They're like down to his butt,
Yeah.
and he's 6'4".
Yeah.
And he walked in and he cut them off.
Yeah.
They're gone. And
Several
his hair is short.
Feet of hair gone. Yeah.
So we were all freaking out, but I mean, it looks so good.
It does.
But
It
yeah,
does
it
look really
was
good, yeah.
wild. So yeah, we had this
Yeah.
whole like moment. Then he's like texting his brother who lives out in North Dakota right now. So he just texted his brother just all of the dreads on the ground of the salon. And he was like, "How long do you think it's going to take before Trey FaceTimes me?" And I mean, like, I think the picture like hit the fan chat and like Trey's on FaceTime.
That's
So
funny.
it was hilarious.
Oh, I love the dreads,
But
but
yeah.
he looks good.
Yeah, the dreads were great.
Yeah.
They look at him, but he did tell me, he's like, I feel so much better. Like they were starting to get really heavy and interrupting his sleep.
Strangling him in
Yeah,
his
he's like, I had the best night's sleep I've had in months.
Yeah. He said
Yeah.
to wake up and it's like sore. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah.
He
Yeah.
told me the hairdresser took one out and handed it to him, and it was like 3 feet long.
Yeah, yeah,
I was like, whoa.
crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, so it was fun.
Yep.
That was our fun Friday night
Yeah.
at the Carl House.
Great time. I'm trying to think. For Sunday, we celebrated our daughter's birthday.
Yes.
So her birthday's coming right up. So she did her flank steak and asparagus and baked
Ooh.
potatoes. It was really good.
Yum.
Yeah. So everyone was over. The queen came, and yeah, we had a great time. It was fun.
Good.
Very
Good.
nice. I was supposed to go to a work Christmas party with my husband, and as you can hear, I'm coming off of a cold, and so I used that as a very convenient excuse to say, how about I skip this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then Saturday, I drove up to Richmond to hang with some of my college girlfriends. It was like the only time we could figure out to do it, so I just went up there for the day and then came back.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and we all got to do the production this
We
weekend.
did.
We were all
Yeah,
having
that was my
nice.
Saturday.
Yes,
And
that was
then,
my Saturday
Yeah,
as
my
well.
Friday was turning the apartment over. So I still haven't put up a Christmas decoration in my
Jamie,
house.
Jamie.
you said you were going to do that this weekend.
I was going to, but then I had to clean the apartment. And then I had the production, and then we had.
I feel like the Stewart house is not going to be decorated for Christmas.
I've got to get. I cannot.
This is why you do it over Thanksgiving break.
I was moving my daughter over Thanksgiving break.
A lot of moving going on.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to get on
At
it.
the risk of your Christmas decorations.
I feel like
Everybody's
maybe
behind
part
it.
of
I'm gonna
Towards
go
the End of
minimalist.
Fun is going to have to
That's
be
what
going
I
over
do.
the
I
stewards
say
and decorating.
I say we roll over to
I
the
have a tree
stewards.
up with white lights.
I like it.
I like it just like that, actually.
Yeah, I think we're going to go minimalist
There you
this
go.
year, so we'll figure
Yeah.
something out.
Do you do
here
anything for the Airbnb usually?
soon. Just a welcome flag.
A Christmas
Not a
welcome
Christmas
flag?
one.
There's a Christmas welcome flag. There was one for Thanksgiving.
Is there a
and there's
Grinch on
one
it? I just-
No. It looks very warm and welcoming. I
Good,
Put a little
good.
Christmas candle out or something in the Airbnb.
don't want to burn the
Something.
place down.
Right.
Yeah.
The production was so good.
Yeah.
It was so
Oh my
good.
gosh.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
missed
Yeah. What was your favorite part of the play?
Oh my goodness. Favorite part of the play? I don't know. Clarence, Jake Lamont. I've just known Jake since he was like born. So I just love that kid so much. And just him playing Clarence was so sweet. I just love that. Charles Fairbanks
He's so good.
is
did
so
so
good.
Yeah. He's so good
He
at
just
that.
him playing that role of George Bailey was perfect.
It really was.
Yes, I can believe that.
So my favorite part
Yeah.
was I was right towards the end, had to go backstage to come out and do kind of the wrap up thing. And my favorite part was watching all of the various stagehands doing all their things.
Yes.
They worked hard during
Yes.
that play, and they just were they were genuinely having just a great time.
Yes.
It was very fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the crew was just awesome.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
They really were. Yeah. My favorite part was, well, first off, I told Rochelle that some of the same people play in this production every year, and they so it felt like they took it up a notch, like a big notch. They were very in control of their scenes and their lines and everything. It was so cool to see. But then my favorite part was like the bar scene where
Yes.
he's stumbling, he's calling, what did he call him? Rummy, get out of here, Rummy. I don't know. And like I'm just like, we're not scared to shy away from stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was so great, like how they used like the screens to like help
Yeah.
set the scenes. And it was just,
Yeah.
they just did such a great job.
They
It was
really did.
wonderful. And Brian Jones helping with this sets. And it was
And a
just
ton of people
beautiful.
from our community that are not connected to our church were there. So that was
Yeah.
also very cool.
So
Yep.
good.
Absolutely.
What a win.
Yep.
All right. So we are continuing our Bible reading challenge for the year, going through the Gospels, and we are in the book of John. And this week, I'm not sure, I didn't check the app this morning. I read it last night. Is it 14 and 15?
Yeah,
It is.
Okay.
is. Mhm.
Okay. I haven't jumped to
Yep.
15 yet, but that's all right.
Yep.
So John chapter 14 and 15. Anything stand out to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but so this is the passage where the analogy of staying connected to the vine. So you're the vine, you're the branches, I'm the vine. Jesus said, remain in me, and if you're severed from me, you can't produce anything. Connected to me, you can do anything. That's just such a powerful image, and I was on a resilient kick for 3 years from COVID to 2 years after that. And that really was the central passage of that whole thing, is just remaining connected to Jesus. And even though I'm like turned the page from the resilient thing, the truths of that are just still so rich to me. And trying to, like, it's just an image where it's an image that I think is easier to wrestle with or to come to terms with when you start thinking about connectedness, like how connected to Jesus am I? You might be able to like fudge on your is Jesus number one thing, but like, am I connected to him? Am I remaining in him? Am I abiding in him? As one of the passages translation says. Like, I think those words are easier to start trying to think through and quantify, like how tethered is my mind and thoughts to who Jesus is, and to challenge yourself to remain more connected, tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah.
Like, I just think there's something really powerful about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so interesting you bring that up, because we kind of took a break from Resilient too and the Pause app and stuff after a little while. But for the last 2 weeks, Nate and I have been doing that again as part of our morning routine.
It's
and
so
then,
good.
to read this passage again. And I think, like, the reminder of the connectedness, but also as I was reading it, just kind of the, like, healthy conviction of it. As to, like, Jesus just talking so much about, like, I'm able to do these things. I have the authority to perform these miracles and to, like, I have the power and the ability to do this stuff because of my connection with God the Father. And you actually have that same authority, but you have to be that rooted and that connected and that obedient to following his commands. And I think sometimes, like, you read that passage and, like, well, I don't see that I'm able to do that. And I don't see that I'm, like, you can read through that and be like, yeah, I can. Jesus is telling me that these things can happen, and that when I ask these things that I should have, that they will happen. But then when you link it to, if I'm being faithful in all of this, and it's like, well, I don't know that I am actually being as faithful as he's called me to be in those things. So it can, there can be some, like, you have to be careful with, like, the legalism and stuff that can come in that. But I think there is a call to, like, am I actually following Christ like I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
And am I as connected to him as, like, he is calling us to be connected? And so, I just found it to be really challenging reading through that today. Like, there's a depth of relationship that, like, Jesus does have with the Father that he's inviting us into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to be, if I, like, sit and pause and, like, sit in that. And I just don't think I take a lot of time to go there. And that's what I like about the Pause app.
Yep.
Like, it causes you to sit in that space.
It does.
Even if it's for 10 minutes, you know?
Yep.
So if we've talked about it a lot on here, but if you haven't done that, you can find it in the app stores. And
well worth it.
It really helps you,
Yep.
helps focus you and get you there.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I found a little piece there at the end that I like, just because we've talked about it a lot, but reading through the Gospels, that you've read through however many times in your life, how it can hit you different in different seasons of life. And I thought it was interesting last night. It hit me. It also can hit you different depending on what you might be reading. Like what? So I'm in 2 different books right now. So I was reading one last night. I've been trying to read at the end of the night, which has been pretty nice. Nice way to go to sleep. Even turned football off last night.
Wow.
Got my reading done.
Joey. Look at you growing.
I'm telling you, look, it's good. Good stuff. So I read a little bit, and then I jumped over to this week's reading, and I found through the lens, the book I was reading, it was a story about a pretty devastating heartbreak, a loss of a loved one, and the power of Jesus through a season like that. And then reading this through those lens, at the end of John chapter 14, he says, I'm leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. Remember what I told you. I am going away, but I will come back to you again. If you really loved me, you would be happy that I'm going with the Father who is greater than I am. And it's like it kind of feels cliche that we say that to somebody that has lost a loved one. They're in a better place. But here's Jesus. And I'm like imagining last night sitting on my sofa, imagining the disciples, like the heartbreak they're already feeling knowing he's about to leave. And so what he shares there, really popped out to me. Yeah,
That's really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
All right. So yesterday we continued our.
Oh, just wait.
Oh, yes,
I
right.
need to interrupt you for a second because
I tried.
this is really, really important.
It is.
I got an email yesterday, and I have to state the facts.
Okay.
It's what I have to do.
It is
yourself.
what you do. No, I'm with you.
This person said that, the title of the email. It's the title of the email, Joey.
Is what?
It says, what the what? Question. Intro to be read by Heather. It's what it says.
It's what the people
It's
want.
what the listeners
It's what
demand.
they want.
Yep.
Yeah.
You didn't disappoint.
So,
I mean, the only one in the room that doesn't like the what is Dumb Sam on the sweater.
Yeah.
That's true.
And he can't
He's
speak
here
today,
today.
so that's
today.
good.
He chose to leave.
Yeah.
That
Did.
was his choice.
Yep.
Yep.
It's,
No one really knows this, but that was why he left.
possibly.
It was the what. He couldn't take it anymore. He's like, I'm out. I got to find another job.
Whatever. And now he's freezing in the
Yeah.
snow in Ohio.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Serves you right. Okay. So this is what it says. Hello, Made for Monday's crew. From a faithful listener, watcher of the Made for Monday podcast. Kimberly and I have noticed over the last few weeks or so that various Believers Church staff have introduced themselves with new titles. Is it possible to do a quick recap of the organizational structure of Believers Church to include the primary responsibilities of the various functions?
Wow, that's going to take a while.
Thank you, Raymond of Kimberly and Raymond.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, probably not the whole thing because that would take a while. We have quite a large staff, but I will say that
So I'm trying to think who's introducing themselves differently.
probably
you
me.
are.
So,
I did on stage.
And
Oh, you
Joey.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kudos
And
on
Tyler.
him for picking up on that.
Yeah.
So those would be the three
Oh,
that
and
are
Tyler
new.
too.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I will address that.
Yeah.
I was ordained in September.
Yes.
So I was the executive director. I am now the executive pastor after being ordained.
Title changed. Role did not.
Correct.
Yes.
So that is that. Joe.
So she's been saying one of the pastors because, I say that. I think Doug is saying that too. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember
maybe.
if he does or not. But, like for the most part, not everyone necessarily grasps what the various pastor roles are. Some of them are pretty straightforward, but some of them are less straightforward. So just saying like, I'm a pastor on staff here seems like a pretty good way to go.
Yeah. So that's that. In September is the start to our ministry year. So that's kind of when, if we do, generally speaking, if there are new staff that come on, if there are new staffing changes, those kinds of things, that's when that happens, generally speaking. So this September, we did do a little bit of some organizational restructuring. And at that time, Joe moved into a leadership supervisory role. And with that, he became our Next Steps director. So he had been serving as our ministry services administrator.
Which I never could remember that title.
Yeah.
So
That was...
this was a good move, in part because now I know what he does.
But that helped us align, really, our adult ministries team. And really follows our engagement strategy. So that brought that whole team under Joe's leadership. And so that is our connections team, our outreach team, and our B groups team.
Yep.
And that follows our engagement strategy.
Yep.
So that whole neighborhood to foyer to living room to kitchen model, that all of those pieces kind of fall under Joe's leadership. And so that just happened to make that make more sense. That's the title we gave Joe, was Next Steps Director. And that caused us to change Tyler's title to the Connections Pastor, because that's really what he's doing, is helping people get connected here. So I hope that offers some clarity. There wasn't a whole lot of jobs changing. We just wanted it to provide their titles to make a little more sense.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone else really changed a whole lot
Yeah.
in that.
Great question.
That is a
But
great question, yeah.
Thanks for the question. We did get some other questions as it relates to Lisa being on stage with me yesterday at the end of the message. So we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But for now,
Yeah,
Joey,
but
I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, all right. So yesterday we continued our It's a Wonderful Life series,
Yeah.
week 2, where Heather brought a message of salvation and continued tying it to George Bailey's story,
Yeah.
which I love. I love how this is going. So one of the things you mentioned were how some of the most impactful things come from shabby little offices. I love that part. So what shabby little office moments have you seen in your life, or maybe even in others' life, in other people's lives?
Well, I shared one of my big ones.
Yeah.
So maybe do you guys
Yeah.
have any you can come up with?
I don't know.
Yeah. So I had, I was thinking about it yesterday, and I thought it was cool how you've tied it to, the birth of Jesus. We'll talk about that in a second. So like, I felt like it was okay to talk shabby little office moments, like through the lens of ministry and the work that we do here and stuff. And I just thought back to one of the ladies that was in my B group, my previous B group, and how, just a standard conversation that I might have written as a shabby little office moment, her coming back to me months later and telling me that those conversations were what led her to join this other B group and join an impact team. She didn't feel like she was qualified to join an impact team and made that. And I'm like, man, sometimes you just have to pause
Yeah.
and think about those moments like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes those the shabbiness or the things that feel like are difficulties or struggles, I guess. I think the Bible talks a lot about, in Scripture, we see a lot of reference to the refiner's fire. And so we can go through these hardships or difficult seasons, and it's really a way of the Lord just like taking us through those seasons where we can become more like Him and see Him working through that and allowing us to come through on the other side with maybe a strength and a resiliency that we didn't have. And seeing Him work and seeing Him provide for us in ways that we wouldn't otherwise experience. I think that's what, like, some of the highs that we experienced in the story that I shared yesterday of mine and Nate's story, was that.
Yeah.
Like, there was some of that in that season that as we were going through that 18-month period, and then in the fallout that came afterward, was just seeing God's faithfulness to us through all of it. And kind of while it was happening, I know there was a lot of questioning, like, did we read this totally wrong? Did we step into something that we shouldn't have stepped into? And then afterward thinking like, no, there was still like good stuff that came from that time period. And some of it was just like lessons learned for next seasons that we went through. And some of it is, I think, just being able to come alongside people in the future, like that we wouldn't otherwise like be able to relate to.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there's all kinds of things that even in those most challenging situations that we face, whether that's like that kind of thing for us, or it's a health crisis or relational things that we go through, those things, if we allow it, God will use in our own lives again, or in the lives of others, I think.
Oh, that's good. So we have at least 2 that I know sitting here that left their hometown and are here now. So y'all didn't have like a shabby George Bailey moment when you left your hometown. It was more of a calling down towards you?
Well, I was following my girlfriend to a different college. She transferred, and suddenly I felt called to go to that same school, so I moved. That was part of it for me. It was also Army GI Bill money I couldn't get at the school I was at, so I had to switch schools anyway. But no, I didn't. It wasn't a George Bailey thing for me. It was I was trying to get closer to Bonita.
Yeah. Well, it was very cool to see this moment in George's life tied to the birth of Jesus. Not something I would have expected, but you did a great job with that.
Yeah, that was really
it was very cool. So what do you think? Why do you think God chose such a humble and ordinary setting for the birth of Jesus?
Yeah, so it's we're well into Advent season right now, and part of my first 15 or so is the Become New podcast that John Ortberg does, and so he's doing an Advent series right now. And I just think, there's a big part of it is this kingdom of heaven thing that's so upside down. The unveiling of the king had to be humble.
Yeah.
His mission was very different than what most people anticipated that it was going to be. He wasn't coming to take over. He was coming to serve. He's coming to lay his life down as a sacrifice. He is the king, and yet in the kingdom of God, the king is the servant of all. And so he has to break the mold of it can't be this spectacular thing. And what's kind of cool is the angels and all these things that are happening around his birth are small little glimpses on the fringe of what really is happening. Yeah. But as it's playing out, it's this, from human perspective, as it's playing out, it looks like this very humble thing, except for all of these spectacular things that are happening around the fringes that makes no, this is truly wonderful. And heaven is celebrating what's happening, even though for us it looks like this troubled, young Jewish woman who's, gets pregnant before getting married. And all of it looks so scandalous from our side. But from heaven's side, there's this amazing thing going on. And I think when you look at it through that lens, it kind of makes sense that that's how he has to come in. But yeah, I also think we miss even some of how that is, the humbleness, the humility of it all was so, is so spectacular. Yeah. And part of what we're called into as we follow Jesus too,
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. And if you want one of the best depictions of the manger scene, hop over to our Facebook page and check out the gingerbread houses we did last week. Because the Bethlehem Bakery won by a landslide, by the way. So,
yeah, it was the ultimate Jesus Jew. You can take a gingerbread house and turn it into a nativity scene. Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Perfect.
I've been leaning in pretty hard to Advent this year and reading this devotional that has 25 days, leading up. And there's a segment each day, and they're short, but they've been so powerful. And I was reminded of just how much Jesus gave up, left behind, to be with us, to make that connection, to bridge that chasm between a holy God and a sinful people. And, not being Jesus, any of us, we can only understand that so far, right? And so I was reading it, and it was getting down into literally Jesus, creator, savior, becomes an embryo in a human body, and he rests in the womb of a young woman, and he goes through all of the things of being human and being even a baby, a child, all of those things that we might think as, well, that's not fitting, that's unholy, that's, and, getting into really, just things that we all experience when we have children or around children, people burping children, all the things that Jesus went through. He literally became one of us. And then, that was compelling for me. But then the segment in this chapter just went on to share a story of this plastic surgeon. And this is where it really came home to me. This woman's husband had been in a fire. He had run in to save his parents, but he couldn't. His parents died, but he was greatly disfigured in the process. And he believed for many years that was a punishment for not saving them, for the bad things he did, whatever. And so he pretty much isolated himself. And his wife had gone to see this particular surgeon and said, he told the story, can you help me? And he said, well, yeah, sure, I can restore his face. And he says, the woman was completely unenthused because she said, he's been to many people have offered. He refuses, and he will refuse this too. And she said, what I want you to do is to disfigure my face so that I can be like him and he might let me back in. And that, even though I haven't experienced that as a human, I can relate to that. And it made me ask myself, would I do that if my own husband isolated himself that much? I mean, that level of love, right, is incredible to me. And that she wanted to be disfigured. And so then, of course, he makes the whole analogy. And the doctor goes on to go to the room because he's so moved by the love. And of course, he turned her down for disfiguring her, but he went and knocked on the door of the husband and basically ended up telling him, this is what your wife, the length that she's willing to go to connect to you. And the guy finally came out of his isolation in his room. And I thought, that is what Jesus did. He took on our disfigurement. And he was, the crazier part is he was happy to do it, because that's how much he loves us, that he wanted that kind of connection with us. And that put me over the edge. That was like, I cried the first 3 times I'd retold that story. I've been retelling it to everybody because it was so powerful to me.
Yeah, that's so good. You said you weren't going to cry here today.
I know. I just got a little little
that's so
whimpering.
good.
Well,
I love
it's
that.
your voice. It's just,
Right. It's the cold.
That's so good. Heather, you continued along George Bailey's story where he discovered that the positive impact he was having on other people's lives. So why is it difficult for us to see sometimes the difference that we're making?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes I think it's just we're so wrapped up in our own circumstances. I mean, that's one thing. Sometimes I think we have visions, like George Bailey. I mean, he had vision for something else, and he had just dreams to be out of the place that he was in, for that to be happening elsewhere. And so I think we do the same thing. We just think like this is supposed to be happening in a different place, in a different environment. If we're miserable in our job, then we don't think that the stuff that we're doing in our current job is going to be helpful to anybody. If we're miserable in where we're living, then we don't think that anything good is happening in the neighborhood that we're currently in. Like there's all sorts of reasons why we don't think that way. So yeah, I think we get in our own way and aren't able to see those things. I think sometimes we're not good at receiving positive feedback. I just think as a whole, like we don't receive that well. We've been taught that there's that's being prideful or that's being there's like not, we don't receive compliments, or we just don't receive that kind of stuff well. So when someone is saying something positive to you or that you're doing something well, we naturally like just kind of say like, oh no, that's not what I'm doing, or that's not true, or So I think we tend to push positivity away from us too,
Oh, that's interesting.
which isn't necessarily good.
Yeah.
I think we can also, we compare, right? And so it seems like the size of the thing I'm
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
isn't as great, or
Right.
nobody knew I did that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it any less great,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
for sure.
And again, just going back to the story I shared, like if Jesus could become that little
Yeah.
to reach us, like there is, there's nothing too small that we can do when we do it in love, when we do it trying to follow the example of Jesus, that isn't seen by the heavens. I believe
Yeah.
that. And it doesn't matter who else knows or sees it, but we have a tendency to believe if I'm not famous, if nobody knows that it
Right.
happened, or if it wasn't in what I perceive to be a big thing in my mind, it was just a small kindness or something. But we have no idea what that small kindness
Yeah.
could really mean in the life of someone else.
Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I think sometimes it was kind of what you were hitting on too, Heather. I think the first thing that you talked about, like a vision of, what you're supposed to be doing or whatever, which I think also plays into that whole comparison thing. That was where my mind first went. Like, I think sometimes people think like, I need my circumstances to change so that I
Right.
can have more impact. And so like I can't do it right now because, well, things aren't ideal right now. But if I could get to this place,
Right.
then I can make an impact and then my life will matter. And I fell into that for years. I've told the story a bunch about, we spent forever trying to get to Francis missionaries. And that whole season, I was like, I'm supposed to be somewhere else, like this is, once I get there, then I will, it was kind of that type of thinking.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about like the Apostle Paul sitting in prison, and his mission was to go where the church wasn't, to evangelize, to organize them into churches, and he did that. And the guy traveled, widely and organized churches all over the place. But then he finds himself sitting in prison, unable to do the thing that he knows he's been called to do, and yet even in those circumstances, he figures out a way to like. And I don't, Paul doesn't know he's writing the Bible, but he, in this moment, he's like, I'm gonna utilize the time that I have to do some good, and so he's to keep going. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna write letters to the churches that I've already established, and I'm gonna give them advice on how they can handle this thing better. Or Timothy's, really struggling over at Ephesus. So I'm gonna write Timothy a letter and let him know how he can manage this, this, and this. And turns out, those letters of instruction and encouragement and clarity end up becoming, a big chunk of our New Testament.
And he's ministering to people that he's in jail with.
That he's in jail with. So like, if you're waiting for your circumstances to change before you can have impact, quit waiting. Like
Right.
there are
So
things that
good.
you can do right where you are. And like, that's the other thing about these letters that Paul wrote. I'm sure in his lifetime, he never really knew, like, of course, how could he know that 2,000 years later, people
Right.
would still be studying his words and pulling, truth out of them that they can apply to their lives to help them follow Jesus better. Like, that's incredible. And so just because you might not notice, and maybe even other people around you don't notice, doesn't mean impact isn't happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ah, so good. Yeah, speaking of impact and the difference we're making, I'm talking to you listeners, the difference that Believers Church is making. Lisa, you had a great moment up there yesterday. You weren't even nervous. It didn't seem like it, at
She's
least.
She's
an
a
old
pro.
pro at the
pro.
public speaking, yes.
It was great where you had a moment where you shared with us the difference that Believers is making with the gift this year and FreeKind. I was wondering if you could chat a little more about maybe outside of the gift, how Believers, people that are interested. I know you were out in the comments chatting with some people yesterday, so I would love to walk through, what kind of difference we can make maybe even outside the gift.
Yeah, thanks for the question. There are so many ways that people can help. And what I tell everyone is, we have a sort of a saying around FreeKind that no one can do everything when it comes to this issue, but everybody really can do something. Mm-hmm. And it can start with, I'm going to start intentionally praying for FreeKind and praying for the issue of human trafficking right here in our community.
Yeah.
prayer is powerful, and we need all the prayer that we can get. So prayer is huge. You can decide that you are unhappy with maybe what the laws look like, and we can connect you with people who work on the legislation around this issue right here in our state. There's a lot of work Virginia still has to do. So people who are inclined in that regard or have connections in that way or influence can do that. We have projects, that can be done remotely. Just things that we need done, that we just need extra help. There's a small and mighty team of 6 people who do all of this work. And so we couldn't do it at all if we didn't have the power of Jesus and if we didn't have our church partners and our volunteers. We have some passionate volunteers. And so it really does range, and it depends on what your availability is or what what talent or resource you might have where you can plug in. And so we offer a virtual orientation every quarter, and people can plug into that. It's an hour long. You can learn a little bit more about the organization, the people who can plug you into those places, fill out a simple application. Or if you want to go deeper and you feel like, I really want to walk alongside a survivor and make sure that they do have a chance to regain their freedom and their sense of hope and belonging. And I want to help them navigate their journey to freedom. And that is called a volunteer survivor advocate in our world. And we have a training coming up in February. It's pretty intensive, so you'll want to pray on that and make sure it's something that you want to do. Most of that is virtual, so it's really accessible. But I think it's good for anybody who really wants to better understand trauma and understand the impact that has on the body and on the brain and on the way that people might show up, and how we as Jesus followers can really just practice biblical hospitality and come alongside them and love them as friends and as neighbors, and not as, somebody other than us, our project to be fixed, but somebody to love. And it's a really powerful training. We get tons of amazing feedback on it. We bring in some outside speakers as well as some of our team members to do that. It's about 40 hours of training that people can take, and then background check, and you can begin to start serving right alongside survivors. Wow. But there's numerous other ways. We have 2 events every year. If that's even if you just help promote the event and you get teams or you host a table at these events, that raises awareness. That brings people who otherwise might not think they want to sit down and learn anything about human trafficking, but they can come to the 5K in the spring, or they can come to the gala, which
and
Heather
the gala is so great.
Jamie have come to. They can tell you more about that.
It really is. It's
really
it's
great.
such a great event. Not only is it fun, you get to dress up and all the stuff, but man, the things I've learned through the years going to that has been so remarkable. So just to dip a little toe into the water, just one of the first kind of aha moments I guess that I had was in conversations around trafficking. So oftentimes there's addiction around it, and there are what we would call sex crimes that happen around it. And so the judicial reform piece of this was one of those things that for me it was oh my goodness, that's seems so obvious, and yet so there's the part of the work that you do and other organizations like you is legal reform, so that people who are being trafficked as sex workers and get arrested, rather than incarcerate them, you're incarcerating someone who is themselves a victim. And so viewing that differently and saying, no, we're not going to incarcerate victims. We're going to offer help, to victims. That just kind of blew my mind. And you can speak to the percentages of your success rate in advocating for people who have been victimized. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think you had a question yesterday with someone in the comments, right?
Yes.
That was wondering a little bit more about that, because you talked a bit about that on stage, that they were just surprised that victims were incarcerated and how that all plays out, and how they're incarcerated, but maybe their abuser is not.
Yeah.
So maybe if you can just spend a little time answering that, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, really it is the way we ended up in that part of the work is really a God thing. Because we learned early on how many people who are victims of the crime are the ones who end up in jail, and the traffickers do not. And certainly the buyers rarely end up in jail. And so that has to change, right? And there are other good organizations out there, other nonprofits getting involved in those two other spaces. So if you think of human trafficking as a triad where there's a buyer, a seller, and a victim, okay? We are squarely working in the space of the victim or the survivor. And because there has been so much misunderstanding over time, as Jamie alluded to, that, they're just a prostitute, right? This belief that it's a choice, when I'm not going to tell you that nobody in this world does that. If you want to know what I really think personally, you can come talk to me individually. But the literature shows from the people who've been interviewed over the years in multiple organizations and studies, people who are in that life are there out of desperation or force, fraud, and coercion, right? They're not there because no little girl or little boy grows up thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to sell my body to somebody else for sex, And the worst part of it is, of course, it's not like they even get to keep the money. So Jamie used the phrase sex worker, which we tend not to use. And the reason is because there is a movement out there of people who put those two words together. And most survivors of trafficking that we've met say those two words don't belong in the same sentence, And as believers, it's like we believe that God created that as something beautiful and loving, not something to abuse somebody with. And so I love it that even survivors like that, those shouldn't even be used together. And that there was one survivor, and this wasn't somebody we served, but a story I read that has never left me. And she said, the only difference between a child victim and an adult is 60 seconds. She said, nothing changed when I turned 18. I was still being abused. I was still doing something I didn't want to do. And so I also want to dismiss the myth around like, it only happens to children, or when it happens to adults, they've made bad choices. Like, we've got to get rid of those assumptions that we make about people because of what they look like on the outside or how they appear to us. But it's because of that it's become a systemic problem. Back to Heather's question and Martin, who asked me in the comments, like, why do they end up in jail? And it's because their trafficker does it by design. It's again, as I shared, most people who are victims, they don't even know they're victims because it has happened in the context of an intimate partner relationship or in a family. And so they're already told ahead of time, if you get picked up, do these things, say these things, and law enforcement isn't your friend. And, and some of that plays out as truth. And so who are they going to believe? This person that they have a relationship with, or this stranger who is, treating them as less than, and treating whatever they see on the face of it, which again, Jamie mentioned addiction, but there are all kind of intersections with trafficking. It could be, it can be addiction. It can be something that looks like domestic violence, but is more than that. It can be somebody who's a veteran and has PTSD, and there's some things going on there. Again, it's that preying on their vulnerability, and then the trafficker, if they're doing other things like, hey, I need you to get these drugs or something, they're going to have the person they're already victimizing, do those things or sign off on that lease agreement. Or a trafficker might buy me a car if I was being trafficked by them. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe things are changing. Maybe, this is going to go in a good direction. And they have me sign off on it. Well, it's to make me the one liable for that. They tell me to use a false name for law, give a false name to law enforcement, all kinds of things like that. So larceny and fraud and drug possession. Those are a lot of the charges that our clients have. It is not primarily prostitution, and so they end up in jail. And to the jail and court system, they're here because they had drugs. They're here because they're just they chose this. And so they cycle in and out of our system. And guess what? When they get out on the other side, either the same trafficker's there to pick them up or a new one. And picture this, like if I'm the court and the jail system, I think you should be lucky that you're getting out. Like you served your time.
Yeah.
And they're not usually, I mean, some of them do get felonies, but a lot of them are not felonies. They're misdemeanors. And so they kind of go, oh, well, you go back into society. And I was thinking, go back where?
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to leave that situation or whatever, where exactly am I going?
Yeah.
And and even if I have a family who loved me and cared about me, which some of our clients do and some of them don't, the shame and the guilt that survivors carry with them will cause them not to go back many times. And so, so then they cycle in and out of our systems unless there's an organization like ours, and we don't know of any other ones in Virginia. We're hoping to kind of package up what we do and license it out there to other people, much like we do with our prevention program in the schools, because we want more people in more communities and more states to even take advantage of that. Because we think we've figured out a way, when they're away from their trafficker, to disrupt that pattern and offer them a different way forward with assistance.
So, Kurz, when you are going to that point, I know you had another question that came up yesterday. How does a victim find FreeKind? Like, how does that intersect for you?
Yeah. So a couple of ways. One is we teach a class in the jails, and the class is really for the way, jails are divided into female and male blocks. That's just how our jails are. And so we offer this class in the women's block in programming, and in the jails, it's open to anybody from our perspective, but different jails have different rules. So anybody can come, but we talk about healthy relationships and healthy boundaries and this thing called trafficking and what it looks like and how it happens. And it's in that class that many people realize, away from their trafficker, away from substances if they were on any, they start to hear that. And they realize, many for the first time, that what happened to them was not a choice, was not love, was actually a crime.
Yeah, they're not criminals. They're realizing they've been victimized.
But think of that cognitive dissonance, right? Like, wait a minute, I'm the one in jail,
Right.
and now you're telling me I'm a victim. And then I thought this person loved me. So that's a lot to process at one time. And so that's why we're there, is to help them process that. So one of the ways is through our class. The other way, we get referrals from law enforcement, from healthcare, from probation officers, from public defenders, and then client-to-client referrals. So when we help someone, this is the thing I love the most, that our referrals are, you don't think of this, this is not like a consumer business, but we get to client. They know each other, right?
Yeah.
They have crossed paths. They've been trafficked together, some of them, or they were friends. And so if somebody's been helped, they tend to tell somebody else. And then we start getting letters from the jails. Hi, so-and-so told me about you. This is my story. Can you help me? So those are all the ways that we get to meet our beautiful
So
clients.
that also kind of leads to what we're doing with the gift.
Yeah.
So talk about that. So the restorative programs that you mentioned, you touched on, and there was a question around that too.
Yeah. I'll just ask that question. We had a question come in via email. It says, "Hi, Made for Mondays crew. I loved Lisa sharing about FreeKind in service this week. I have a question about the gift portion that goes to FreeKind. The money that goes to help the survivors seems like such a small amount. All the things you said that the money will help with, housing, therapy, community, etc., for 12 months. That's amazing. How are you able to accomplish all of that for such a small amount per survivor? Thanks, Britt."
Yeah, so just for clarity, for the sake of those listening, in the outlet last week, we kind of laid out, all the initiatives, and we did it in the message portion from a couple weeks ago also. So the total goal is $100,000, and it kind of gets chunked out, $50,000 Operation Blessing, which breaks up into a couple different things, $20,000 local partners, FreeKind being one of them, and then Oasis and Coalition Against Poverty in Suffolk. Oasis and CAPS getting $5,000 each and $10,000 with FreeKind.
Yeah. So it was a great question. Thank you, Brittany. So if you feel extra generous, you should give more because it would actually help more. But the answer is that we partner. Again, I said earlier, like no one person or organization can do everything that is needed in this space, even just on the survivor side. And so we are just it's just part of our DNA. We are huge partner people. We don't feel the need to create and do all the things, but we want to partner with those who are doing those things well so that we can serve our clients well. And the more people that show them love in those practical ways, I mean, imagine them starting to believe again that
there's this network of organizations out here. Right?
Yeah, there are people who really know what's happening to me and people like me, and they do really care, and it's going to give me more confidence anyway. So I love the beauty of that collaboration. And so the programs, these residential long-term restorative programs that come and have full wraparound services, they themselves, most of them are their own nonprofits that raise their own funds in their own communities so that they can provide these services for free for clients over the long haul. But each of those programs, think of this too, it's not like you want to put everybody in one place. So most of these homes have capacity for anywhere from, I'd say 4 to 12. And then that's why we have to work with a whole network of programs to get people placed in a way that is going to be most helpful for them and where there's an available bed. So the programs do, raise the funds for that. But what the gift is doing on this end, you get to be anyone who gives to the gift part of the front end on the part that Believers does, which is that jail piece, which is where we're identifying people. The former ambassador for trafficking in persons for the U.S. said that we are currently identifying, globally, less than 1% of victims. And that's a whole nother podcast. But the fact that is the thing that we're doing and nobody else is doing that, if I don't even know I'm a victim and I'm not being connected to service, like it doesn't matter what services are out there if I don't know they're there to help me. Yeah. And so that identification, that transitioning them from jail, that work behind the scenes with their public defender and probation officer, the work to connect them to different programs so that they can interview, they can fill out the application. This is with the client. They get to make part of this decision. That's part of the re-empowering them. This is their life to move forward in a different direction. So all of that. And then the other thing that we do is we are often on the bond. So if a judge says, instead of sending you to jail, I'm gonna give you alternative sentencing. I'm gonna allow you to go to this program. And think of that. The judge has many times seen them multiple times thinking, well, this is not working. I'm willing to try this with you. And as Jamie mentioned, this is crazy to me. And this is all credit to Kathy and our frontline team of case managers. But when they go in the court, and they do all that labor-intensive work of coordinating with everybody to get an acceptance to a program and take that into the courtroom, we average 99% favorable sentencing outcomes for clients when we advocate for them. So that is jumping that first huge hurdle for them to get on their way to freedom. Yeah. Because spending time in jail isn't helping anybody, and somebody's waiting to pick them right back up. But if they have that spark of hope that, wait a minute, I can get to a program, I can get the healing I need. I can get, I don't have to go back to a life like that. That is the power of the gift, because the gift this year with that amount will help 10 survivors get over that first hurdle and be on their journey to freedom.
Yeah, that's so good. That's awesome. Lisa, thank you for joining us today. It's a heavy topic, but it's so important for us to discuss and try to help. So to recap, if you want to help, first and foremost, we can be praying. We can be praying around all of this. And for FreeKind, we can give to the gift and help 10 survivors clear that first hurdle. And then if you feel called to do even more than that, then you can certainly reach out to Lisa and she'd be happy to get you connected.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks, friends. Thanks for joining us. That's all we have time for today. This week, we're continuing our It's a Wonderful Life series, week 3, and we'll be on campus at 9 and 10:45. And if you can't join us here in person, we'll be on YouTube at 1 o'clock. So that's all we have time for, so go and be love.